If you thought the drama surrounding Bella Ramsey couldn't get any worse, buckle up, because this time she's managed to turn what could have been a small, private conversation into a headline-grabbing PR nightmare. The story starts with Pedro Pascal, the co-star she once praised endlessly during the first season of The Last of Us. He's always been known for being warm with his colleagues, and in several interviews, he's admitted that when his anxiety flares up, he sometimes needs to physically ground himself, usually with a touch on the arm or shoulder of someone nearby. It's a harmless quirk to most people, but not to Bella. Out of nowhere, Bella decided to take that personal habit and put it under a public microscope. What could have been a respectful conversation between colleagues turned into a loud, attention-grabbing meltdown that the internet is still dissecting, right?
Had to not like each other for a bit.
You had to not like me, which
True.
came easy.
The incident began during a convention panel where both Bella and Pedro were on stage answering fan questions. The mood was light and the audience was excited to see them together again. Pedro reached over and lightly tapped Bella on the arm while telling a funny story, the kind of thing he'd done dozens of times before. Instead of laughing it off or ignoring it, Bella stopped the conversation cold. In front of the cameras, she launched into a mini rant about how unnecessary touching was distracting and made her uncomfortable. The room fell silent. Pedro, clearly caught off guard, gave an awkward smile and tried to move on, but Bella wasn't done. She doubled down, saying that people needed to learn boundaries. And Eder respeito waiuser por respeis a personal stos at all times. The audience, unsure how to react, gave a scattered round of applause. But the damage was already done. Bella had just thrown her co-star under the bus in front of a live audience.
I'm sorry. That was acting. That's what that was. I don't really care what happens with this movie. I really hope her career is pretty much over. I'd be thrilled to see that. I can't imagine. I mean, Chris.
When Bella Ramsey was cast, clips of the exchange exploded online within hours. Fans who had adored the Pedro-Bella dynamic were shocked by how aggressive her tone came across. Twitter lit up with side-by-side videos showing years of Pedro being openly affectionate with co-stars like Oscar Isaac and Sarah Paulson, all of whom had nothing but positive things to say about him. The contrast made Bella's reaction seem even more exaggerated and out of proportion. Memes started rolling in with captions like, Pedro Pascal breathing in the same room as Bella Ramsey, a crime in progress. Others mocked Bella's lecture mode tone, comparing it to a teacher scolding a student over forgetting homework. But Bella didn't stop there. Instead of letting the controversy die down, she stoked the fire on Instagram Live just 2 days later. Sitting in what looked like her kitchen, she started talking about toxic habits in the entertainment
Whoa, oh my God, what?
and
Is it
how
getting
even
bigger?
small
Stop it.
actions
No, seriously,
could create
what's
an
with that?
uncomfortable
Fine, Joel.
environment.
Does it hurt?
Without
Please,
naming
you're making
Pedro
yourself
directly,
conscious.
she
Sir,
made
it's
it
just a little bit
obvious who she
disturbing.
was
Normal head,
talking
Joel. Can we
about
just
by
get back to the door things?
referencing the
Planetary,
exact
even. Gonna have
moment
to
from
area
the
code soon.
convention panel. She described feeling trapped and put on the spot. Within minutes, comments were flooding in, telling her to stop dragging her co-star and to handle it privately. She ended the live stream abruptly, clearly annoyed by the backlash.
Like most people, I liked the first season. I thought they did a great job. Season 2, I was skeptical on them not recasting Ellie and keeping Bella Ramsey as Ellie because it's supposed to take place 5 years into the future, but obviously Bella Ramsey in real life was not going to age that much in, the 2 years it took between seasons. So in the show, Ellie still looks exactly the same, but is supposed to be 5 years older. Also, Ellie still acts exactly the same. For some reason, they made the decision for The Last of Us Season 2 to make Ellie dumb, to the point where she even says that she's stupid. Why?
Entertainment news outlets picked up the story immediately. Headlines read, Bella Ramsey publicly shames Pedro Pascal over on stage moment, and TLOU stars feud in front of fans. Even publications that had once championed Bella's performances were now questioning her judgment, and PR analysts on talk shows discussed how publicly calling out a colleague, especially one as beloved as Pedro, was a risky move that could alienate both the fan base and potential employers. And alienate she did. The comments on HBO's official The Last of Us page were flooded with messages from fans asking for Bella's removal from any future projects. You don't publicly humiliate your co-star over something so small, one viral comment read. This isn't advocacy, this is attention seeking.
Show is finally speaking out about its failure. The Last of Us creator Craig Mazin admits season 2 was a finale, drew over 50% less than the finale of season 1. You lost
Up your impression at all, or is it pretty much the same?
Well, then the noise is the same. I've not got any more noises in my back. The new infected are pretty terrifying. They're so smart, and they haven't really got a noise. That's the whole point of them. They're silent and terrifying.
Ooh, give us a little silent and terrifying.
Pedro himself stayed quiet on the matter, which only made Bella's repeated statements seem even more one-sided. Every time she spoke about it, she framed herself as the victim, insisting that she was just trying to start a conversation about boundaries. But to most observers, it looked like she was blowing up an issue for the sake of making headlines. The irony was that Pedro's habit had never been an issue with any other co-stars, and those who had worked with him described him as incredibly respectful and considerate. In fact, several former colleagues went out of their way to post photos and videos of themselves hugging Pedro, laughing with him, and generally painting him as the complete opposite of the way Bella's comments implied. Behind the scenes, sources began whispering about HBO's growing frustration with Bella's behavior. Executives were reportedly worried that the controversy was overshadowing the show itself. Season 2 had already been met with mixed reviews, and they feared that Bella's feud with Pedro could fracture the fan base even more. According to one insider, HBO's PR team had advised Bella to release a joint statement with Pedro to smooth things over. She refused, saying she didn't want to water down her message. That refusal was a turning point. The studio realized she wasn't interested in resolution. She wanted to keep the spotlight on herself. Fans noticed the shift too. For years, Pedro had been the protective big brother figure to Bella, often deflecting awkward questions in interviews and praising her talent. Now their joint appearances were non-existent. Bella began showing up to events alone, and Pedro was often paired with other cast members for promotional duties. The warm, easy chemistry that had once been a selling point for the show was gone, replaced by an awkward silence that everyone could feel, but no one was willing to officially acknowledge. The fallout wasn't limited to The Last of Us. Casting directors reportedly began reconsidering Bella for upcoming roles. In an industry where reputation travels fast, the perception that she was difficult to work with and willing to air grievances publicly was a major red flag. One producer, speaking anonymously to an industry blog, said that you don't want to bring that kind of energy onto a set, especially when the person she's targeting is universally liked. Rumors began swirling that Bella's management team was scrambling to repair her image, but every time they tried to steer her away from the topic, she'd bring it up again in another interview or social media post. Meanwhile, Pedro's fan base rallied around him even more. Support hashtags trended for weeks, and fan art portraying him as a calm, unbothered king in the face of drama filled Twitter and Instagram. Bella, on the other hand, saw her follower count take a noticeable dip. Even some of her more loyal fans expressed disappointment, saying they had supported her through earlier controversies but couldn't get behind this one. There's a way to advocate for yourself without throwing someone else under the bus. The turning point came when South American fan conventions began quietly dropping Bella from their guest lists. Officially, they cited scheduling conflicts, Betinomer 80, but insiders claimed the real reason was fear of awkward tension if Pedro was also in attendance. Losing those appearances meant losing not only exposure, but also a significant income stream, a consequence that Bella reportedly didn't see coming. Friends claimed she felt blindsided and betrayed by the industry, insisting that she was being punished for speaking her truth. But to critics, it looked like she was facing the natural consequences of her own decisions. By the time the dust started to settle, the damage was done. Bella Ramsey had managed to alienate one of her closest allies in Hollywood, turn large swaths of the fan base against her, and make herself a cautionary tale about the dangers of letting ego and impulse drive your public behavior. What could have been a small, respectful conversation between two colleagues had spiraled into a months-long spectacle, one that cost her opportunities, reputation, and goodwill. And the worst part, the entire thing started over a moment so minor that most people wouldn't have remembered it if she hadn't blown it up in the first place. The first real test of whether Bella grasped the scale of the damage came during an awards season roundtable. She wasn't slated for the main table. Producers seated her on a secondary panel about navigating spotlight pressure, but she clearly viewed it as a chance to reframe the story. When the moderator tossed a soft question about healthy boundaries on set, Bella pounced. She recapped the convention moment in clinical detail, then insisted her reaction had been educational, not confrontational. The room went still. A veteran actor gently offered that conversations about comfort are best handled one-on-one. Another added that grace under pressure is part of the job. Bella forced a tight smile and said, "Grace is a two-way street." Clips of that exchange went viral, and not in the way she hoped. Commenters called the performance defensive, combative, and still about her. Sensing the tide, her team floated an apology tour light, a carefully worded notes app post, a late-night couch appearance, and a charity tie-in about workplace wellness. But the draft apology read like a legal memo. No ownership, just phrasing about misinterpretation. The late-night booking fell through after producers previewed talking points and saw she planned to relitigate the panel rather than pivot. Even the charity partner balked, worried the message would be eclipsed by the feud itself. For an actress who once had an easy path to glossy profiles, doors were suddenly, conspicuously, half closed. Then came the leak. A short audio clip, likely snagged from a pre-interview warm-up, captured Bella venting about performative niceness in Hollywood and how some people hide behind anxiety to make others uncomfortable. She didn't name Pedro, but she didn't need to. The phrasing mirrored her live stream, and the internet connected the dots in minutes. That single clip detonated whatever sympathy lingered. Fans who had patiently urged a private resolution shifted to open frustration. You can ask for space without trivializing someone else's coping mechanisms, one widely shared post read. The word uncharitable trended alongside her name. Meanwhile, the studio's internal response moved from quiet counseling to formal structure. New media training modules rolled out across productions: how to de-escalate on stage, how to redirect without shaming, how to convert a boundary request into a graceful beat. Crew joked they were getting Bella drills, but the intent was serious: protect the work, protect the people, minimize live mic landmines. Ironically, the curriculum showed exactly how simple the original moment could have been. A light tap, a whispered, "Hey, not right now," and the story never exists. Conventions felt the chill fastest. Organizers started separating Bella's appearance days from Pedro's to avoid combustible Q&As. Her solo sessions drew smaller crowds, and the questions skewed practical. What advice do you have for young actors about taking feedback? She answered at length about sticking to your instincts, which only reinforced the sense that she'd learned the wrong lesson. At one signing, a fan nervously asked how to advocate for themselves kindly. Bella's reply, "Sometimes kindness is enabling," ricocheted around social feeds as proof she still preferred lecturing to listening. Brand partners took note. One lifestyle label quietly paused a capsule
You have not
campaign,
like me,
citing
which
creative
can be.
timing. A beverage sponsorship recut its spot to feature ensemble footage rather than her. None of these were catastrophic, but the pattern was unmistakable. Risk-averse entities were hedging. In a business built on heat, she'd become warm to the touch. Trade columnists framed the saga as a modern parable, the difference between being right and being effective. One editorial argued Bella tried to win a values debate in a venue that demanded composure, not confrontation. Another pointed to Pedro's silence as strategic mastery. When you don't feed a narrative, it starves. Casting chatter reflected the same calculus. Rumored shortlists for prestige projects no longer included her name, replaced by actors praised for set EQ. Several showrunners told reporters off the record that they now weigh temperament fit as heavily as tape. Bella attempted a pivot, an invitation-only salon about rebuilding trust in creative teams. The panel's premise sounded promising until attendees realized the case study was again her own dust-up. When a producer asked how she would handle the convention moment differently, she said she would choose stronger language sooner. Groans. A junior publicist summarized the evening in a viral thread. She wants to be right on paper, not helpful in practice. The most revealing beat came from Pedro's camp, not through a clapback, but through action. He quietly partnered with a mental health nonprofit to film a short PSA about grounding techniques and consent. In the video, he demonstrates how to ask before initiating contact and how to self-ground without involving others. It's measured, humble, and entirely non-targeted. The response is overwhelming. Gratitude from fans, retweets from clinicians, stitch after stitch from creators praising the tone. Without saying a word about Bella, he reframed the topic and walked away with the win she kept chasing. By now, even fair-minded observers conceded the obvious. The longer Bella kept the grievance alive, the smaller she looked inside it. Friends urged her to find a neutral, humble moment, a quick human check-in that acknowledged impact over intent. I overreacted publicly to something I should have handled privately. I'm working on that. Instead, she posted a moody photo carousel captioned, "Boundaries aren't mean." No one disagreed with the sentence, everyone disagreed with the timing. 6 weeks later, a mid-budget thriller she'd circled cast someone else. The director's polite statement praised the incredible talent pool. Insiders whispered the real reason: the team couldn't risk a press tour dominated by old questions. On cue, think pieces arrived about the PR tax of unresolved drama, how one unclosed loop can shadow every new opportunity. The lesson was brutal in its simplicity. When you make yourself the story follows you. There was briefly a glimmer of course correction. Bella appeared on a respected craft podcast, and for 20 uninterrupted minutes, she talked shop, scene work, dialect drills, finding stillness on camera. It was sharp, engaging, and unguarded. For a moment, comments filled with relief. Dives, this, just do this. Had she left it there, the tide might have turned. But the host's final question, anything you do differently this year, drew a familiar edge. I'd speak sooner, she said, and just like that, the air went out of the room. In the end, the arc wrote itself. A small human friction point, easily solvable, entirely survivable, was inflated into a months-long referendum that benefited no one and cost her the most. The audience didn't punish her for having boundaries. They recoiled at the spectacle of a public scolding where a private sentence would have sufficed. Studios didn't blacklist her for values. They cooled because they couldn't trust the aftercare. There is still a path back. There almost always is. It doesn't run through statements, panels, or corrective think pieces. It runs through the quiet work of being excellent at the job and uninteresting as a headline, through the grace to let a moment be smaller than your response, through the strength to say the soft thing in the soft place at the soft time. Until then, the most accurate summary is the one fans mutter whenever this saga resurfaces. It didn't have to be this big. She made it this big, and she's the only one who can make it small again.